At my grandfather's will reading, I was told, "You can wait outside." My cousin smirked. "Why would we waste a seat on you?" I looked around, everyone else had a seat at the table. Even the gardener had a seat, so I picked up my folder, turned to them, and said, "Check your email." I left, shutting the door behind me. Dad called, Mom ran out. Update 1: I showed up at Grandpa's house in Queen Anne, an hour early, wearing the navy blazer he gave me for my design school interview. I brought the sketchbook we used to share, and a letter I wrote him the week before he passed. But when I reached the front porch, Serafina was already there. She didn't even look me in the eye. "The room's full," she said, stepping between me and the door. "You can wait outside." I thought she was joking until she shut the door in my face. For 22 minutes, I stood there frozen while behind the wooden panels, I heard laughter, glasses clinking, the lawyer reading each name from Grandpa's will. I heard them announce Leora as the new lead of the design division. I heard someone cheer, and I heard nothing else, not my name, not a question, not a voice asking, "Where's Zinea?" The only thing I could hear now was my heartbeat, steady, dull, like a nail being hammered into something hollow. I didn't knock. I didn't cry. I walked back to my car, opened my laptop, and sent one email to the entire Caldwell family, to the board of the company, to every client I ever served. It contained 3 things: a resignation letter, a portfolio of the original designs they stole, and an announcement of my new studio, Apex Horizon. By the time I started the engine, my phone lit up with 18 missed calls, but it was too late. They didn't save me a seat at the table, so I built my own. My name is Zinea Caldwell. I wasn't just excluded from a will, I was erased on purpose. If you've ever been cast out of your own family, I hope my story makes you feel less alone. Before I continue, can you drop a quick hi in the comments or let me know where you're watching from? Sometimes knowing someone's out there makes the pain a little lighter.
Thank you.
Now, let me tell you everything. I was born in Spokane, Washington, into a family that prized quiet intellect over flash. My father managed the local library with the kind of reverence people usually reserved for churches. My mother taught math at the middle school just 3 blocks from our home. She had a chalkboard heart, firm, structured and exacting, but she never missed a single parent-teacher night, even when the weather turned. But it was my grandfather, Theodore Caldwell, who shaped my world. Every summer, while other kids went off to camp or practice piano, I spent my days in sawdust and cedar. My grandfather's workshop in Seattle, the heart of Caldwell and Sons, smelled of wood, oil, memory, and focus. He built furniture like a man telling stories. Each joint, each curve, a choice made with intention. At 8, he let me help him with a table, walnut with a curved edge that caught light like water. He handed me a carving tool, and guided my small hand to etch the letter Z under the tabletop. "If you still love this work when you're grown," he said, brushing away a curl of wood, "there'll be a seat for you at the big table." He didn't smile when he said it. He didn't need to. The gravity in his voice was enough. That was the day I stopped watching him work, and started trying to earn a place beside him. I threw myself into everything. I double majored at the University of Washington Interior Design and Business Management, and graduated with 2 master's degrees. While my classmates chased big brands and trendy open-concept office spaces, I studied antique dovetails and sustainable lacquer. I came back home, at 25, not with a resume, but with a vision. When I joined Caldwell and Sons, as a design assistant, I didn't expect a red carpet. What I wanted was to earn my way from the floor up just like my grandfather did. Within 2 years, I developed a line of mid-century modern pieces that reduced production time by 30%. Sales rose, reviews poured in. We weren't just staying afloat, we were leading. But every presentation was delivered by Quentin Hale, my cousin, head of production, and someone who had always worn his entitlement like a tailored blazer. He was good at smiling when credit came. I convinced myself it was fine. It was a family business, we all played our part. And yet, I watched that long oak conference table grow. Every major decision in Caldwell and Sons happened around it. Every key nameplate had a chair except mine. I brought ideas, I brought numbers. But I still sat at the edge on a stool I rolled in myself. And I waited for recognition, for the promised seat, for my name to mean more than just the girl who helps Quentin. I told myself it would come. After all, my grandfather saw me. He reviewed my designs, scribbled notes in the margins in his stiff but careful hand. Strong silhouette. Consider alternate grain. Zinea, refined leg taper. I kept every scrap, but what I didn't realize then was that a name doesn't echo in a room unless someone is willing to say it aloud. The first hit came softly, like a door swinging shut behind you. I'd spent 3 months working on a dining table design that blended Northwest architectural elements with minimalist Japanese joinery. It was bold and elegant, with hand-cut joints that reduced waste and made assembly seamless. I'd shown Quentin the early sketches. He nodded, said it was interesting, and then disappeared with my folder. 2 weeks later, during the quarterly product meeting, Quentin unveiled at my table, my design. He named it the Hale Table, called it a collaborative concept. I sat 3 seats down, still smiling, because I didn't want to believe it. After the meeting, I cornered him in the hallway. "That was my design," I said. He didn't flinch. "You contributed to some of the structural refinements," he said. "But at Caldwell, we don't fuss about who presents what. We're family, family." The word felt like a bruised dot. Now you can watch the second part by pressing share and more. Update 2 I tried. Marissa next, my cousin, head of HR, always practical to a fault. Designs created during work hours belong to Caldwell & Sons, she told me flatly, "You know that." It wasn't just the design, it was the silence, the erasure. Days later, I passed by my grandfather's office. His coughing startled me, deep, ragged. When I knocked and entered, he was stuffing something into a drawer, a cream envelope with my name scrolled in his handwriting. "What was that?" I asked. He waved me off. "You just keep doing what you're doing, Xenia. The time will come." But I started to feel it slipping. His voice sounded weaker. His grip on the company, on me, was thinning like aged pine. And then came Leora, my youngest cousin, fresh out of college with a communications degree and a knack for Pinterest boards. She was charming, camera-ready, and barely knew the difference between mahogany and maple. 2 weeks after joining, she was added to the design team. A month later, she was chosen to present the fall line. And when I saw her slideshow, the silhouettes, the motifs, I felt like I'd been gutted. They were mine. Slightly tweaked, reworded, but undeniably mine. When I confronted her, she looked startled. "Oh, I didn't know," she said, blinking. Quentin shared those with me as references. She didn't steal, she inherited. At the meeting, she was called a fresh perspective. The room applauded. Someone suggested she might lead the next innovation cycle. I, the original designer, was noted as having provided visual support and technical materials. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in bed scrolling through our company drive logs. Quentin had accessed my folders, just hours before he sent Leora her inspiration pack. It wasn't carelessness, it was coordination. And Serafina, our eldest cousin, unofficial CEO, had been quietly championing Leora in recent meetings. Suddenly, I saw the pattern. They were grooming her, not just as a designer, but as the heir. I stopped sharing drafts on the company network. I began printing my designs, stamping them with dates, and locking them in a fireproof box at home. Then I rented a modest studio in Belltown. Just a workbench, a drafting table, and the quiet I needed. At night, after hours, I started sketching under a different name, one no one in the Caldwell building knew, Apex Horizon. It wasn't a plan yet, it was a murmur, a whisper in the bones. But I knew one thing for certain, if they weren't going to build me a seat at that table, I'd have to carve my own. A week after I had nearly finished refining the latest collection, the phone rang. It was Marissa. Her voice clipped and almost rehearsed. "Xenia, I thought you should know, Grandpa passed this morning." The words didn't hit all at once. They folded in slow motion, like dust settling on an old bench. I sat in silence for several seconds, staring at my reflection in the dark window, before whispering, "Okay." It was all I could say. There had been so many things left unsaid between us, and I had hoped selfishly maybe, that I'd still have time, but that time was gone. A few days later, I put on the navy dress I'd saved for important family events, packed my design folder, just in case someone asked about the fall prototypes, and drove to the family home in Queen Anne for the reading of the will. That house, perched on the slope with its sweeping view of the Sound, had once felt like the heart of something sacred. Now it felt like the headquarters of a story I no longer belonged to. I walked up the porch steps with every intention of doing what I'd always done, wait my turn, smile politely, offer proof of my effort. But before I could even step through the double doors, Serafina appeared in the foyer. She wore a structured black blazer, and a thin smile. "There's not enough space in the room," she said, without blinking. "You can wait outside, Xenia." It took me a second to realize she wasn't joking. I looked over her shoulder, and saw the others gathered in the front parlor. Quentin leaning against the mantel, Marissa flipping through a copy of the will, Leora perched next to the attorney. No one made room, no one even turned their head. I'll just stand, I said quietly. Serafina stepped forward. It's not about standing, it's about who's included. Then she closed the door. Not hard, not loud, just final. I stood on the porch, gripping the strap of my bag like it might tether me to something. Inside, voices floated through the old windows. Light laughter, the clink of ice and glasses. It was as if the man I had loved more than anyone had passed, and they were already rewriting the ending without me. From the crack in the window pane, I could make out the voice of the family attorney. Leora Vance is named as the inheritor of Theodore Caldwell's creative estate for demonstrating vision and promise in the company's design future. Nothing more, no mention of me, not even a footnote. I didn't wait for the rest. I walked off the porch, sat on the bench by the hydrangeas I used to trim with Grandpa, and opened my laptop. My fingers moved without hesitation, my chest hollow but steady. I opened a blank email, addressed to every family member and the company board. In the subject line, I wrote my resignation. In the body, I laid it all out. The timeline of every design, the digital footprints, the file history logs, screenshots of email transfers. I attached folders, organized, time-stamped, cataloging the work that had been paraded under someone else's name. I didn't demand anything, I simply presented the truth. Then I added a second message, one addressed, not to the company, but to my family. I told them what it felt like to be invisible, what it meant to hear the word family used like a currency I couldn't afford. I said goodbye, and then at the very end, I wrote this. I am launching Apex Horizon, my own design studio. It will honor craftsmanship, sustainability, and integrity. Everything I learned from Grandpa, everything I still believe in. I hit send. Now you can watch the third part by pressing share and more. Update 3. As I walked back to the street, I heard it. One phone buzzed inside the house, then another, then a chiming cascade. It was as if the truth had been dropped in the center of the room like a wine glass shattering on hardwood. I didn't feel triumphant. There was no adrenaline, just a numb ache behind my ribs, and a question echoing quietly in the back of my mind.
Did they even read to the end?
I disappeared for a while. I ignored Marissa's texts, let Quentin's calls go straight to voicemail. I didn't want clarification or apology. I wanted distance. I left the apartment near the Caldwell building, and moved to Belltown into a tiny loft above a used bookstore, and 2 blocks from the studio I'd rented months ago in secret. The morning after my email, I arrived at the studio early. The air still smelled faintly of varnish and dust. Talia Wren was already there, sleeves rolled up, examining a slab of walnut we'd picked out together. "You sure about this?" she asked. I didn't answer, I just handed her a cup of coffee, and laid out our first build. It was the same wood Grandpa loved, same curves, same language, but this time it would have my name etched beneath the surface. We worked in silence that first week, focused, intentional. There was a kind of sacred defiance in every joint we fit together. It wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. I called Jasper Cole that Friday. He'd left Caldwell quietly months earlier after being told he lacked the right pedigree for client-facing roles. When I explained the vision, design built on ethics, artistry, and environmental commitment, he didn't hesitate. "I've been waiting for that call," he said. We met with Vera Langley the following week. She had worked with Grandpa in his early days, back when Caldwell and Sons was just a modest storefront and a dream. I was nervous to show her the plans, but when I laid them out, she nodded slowly and said, "So you finally decided to stand on your own 2 feet. We called it Apex Horizon, a name meant to reflect the peak of craftsmanship and the openness of what came next. The designs blended traditional lines with modular sustainability. We used salvaged wood, local vendors, every table came with a card detailing its story and origin. But building something new doesn't mean the past lets go. 2 of Caldwell's former distributors declined to carry our line, citing loyalty concerns. I received a letter from the Caldwell legal team, Marissa's name at the bottom, formally requesting that I cease using designs developed during my employment. I spent a week gathering documentation. Every sketch, every date-stamped draft, every private file created outside company hours. I submitted it through my attorney with a clear message: these ideas were born in silence, but they are mine. Talia grew anxious. She called me one night. "Senia, are you sure we're not walking into something too big?" "I'm sure," I told her. Then I restructured the business license to list me as sole owner, protecting her and Jasper from liability. Still, the silence was heavy. No one from the family responded. Not even a single line of reply. I stayed up late most nights sanding down edges, checking inventory, building and rebuilding our budget projections. But at night, lying in the dark above the studio, I found myself wondering, was the silence guilt or confirmation that I'd never mattered to begin with? Then one email arrived. No subject line, no signature, just a photo. The old table I had built with Grandpa years ago, my first one, still sat in the family living room. I recognized it instantly by the grain. There under the table, my little carved Z was still intact. At the bottom of the photo, scribbled in ink, "Senia, don't quit." It was from Leora. She hadn't said a word in that room, hadn't protested. But now, weeks later, in the quiet, she said the only thing that mattered. It wasn't reconciliation, it wasn't closure, but it was enough to steady my hands as I picked up my chisel again, because I knew now I had walked away from the table, but I hadn't left the craft. And the work still knew my name. 2 weeks after I sent that email, Marissa called again. Her voice was soft this time, slightly cracked, as though the weight of everything was finally landing where it should. "The family wants to meet Spokane. Can you come?" I didn't ask who wanted it. I didn't ask why. I said yes. Not because I believed anyone was ready to apologize, but because I needed to look each of them in the eye, the ones who sat in that room without speaking my name. I needed to see if they could still keep it quiet after everything I had uncovered. I packed carefully, the original sketches, the time-stamped printouts, a full set of invoices documenting every hour spent at the Belltown studio, and the letter I had once written my grandfather, folded twice, corners softened by rereading. I didn't know if it would matter. I just knew I needed to carry it. Now, you can watch the fourth part by pressing share and more.